Next, we come to that hypothesis. That hypothesis is just a logical reasoning or assumption or proposition, what we may say, that we are thinking that what should my the result. What we do the hypothesis, because through hypothesis we used to understand that what should be the value from the sample to the population parameters. We just need to try to take an assumption whether it will be the same the population from the sample that we used to do. Hypothesis is a logical suppositions or reasonable guess and educated conjectures. Many times I found that this particular word, that conjecture, proposition, supposition, they used to use, and we used to get confused that in that what actually they used to ask. Sometimes these words are not the common frequent word what we are using it. So if you just remember this word, then it may help you to select that just examiner want to ask that he is asking or she is asking about the hypothesis. Hypothesis is a conjectural statement of the relation between two or more variables. And hypothesis are the statement about the relations between the variables. And hypothesis is a tentative generalization, but the validity remain to be tested. I told you it is an assumption. We are taking a general idea from the different sources, own experience, literatures, but has to be tested. Or it is a propositions or condition or principle which is assumed perhaps without belief in order to draw out its logical consequences, and by this method to test its accord with facts which known or may be determined. For this previous chapter in that level of measurement, you may follow again the book of that Kalinga, that will give you that better highlights, or you may GAN post there also you may download this literatures. But for particular this chapter hypothesis, it is better to follow any statistical books. Generally, I used to follow the book of that S.P. Gupta, and they have a very illustrated description or meanings are mentioned in the different definitions are mentioned in the hypothesis. Here I put that all the type of definitions here, that you should not get confused if any question has been asked just twisted. So you should get a ready-made answer for your during the day of your exam table. Now there are many books, you will find that many type of hypotheses are there, but generally, frankly speaking, hypotheses are the two types. One is the null hypothesis, another is the alternate hypothesis. Null hypothesis means the hypothesis of the no relations or no differentiations. That means generally used to denote as the H0, that null hypothesis. There is no differentiation. If I see that now I have 100 participants, maybe the male, some maybe the female, or we may consider it that the participation of the MSc and PhD students are the both are there and there are no differentiations. So we may consider the participation are MSc and PhD are the equal. That means no differentiation. This is my null hypothesis. What should be the alternate hypothesis? That participation of that MSc and PhD student other differ or not equal. That may be, I'm not telling that which is higher, or MSc student higher or PhD student higher, or which is lower. We are not telling. That is, it is differ. That is the alternate hypothesis. Remember that all the times in exam it is asked that alternate hypotheses are the research hypothesis. Alternate hypothesis is the research hypothesis. That means if I say that PhD students are more interested to go through these courses because they deviate from the coursework to engage in the research, so therefore they have problem to recapitulate, so therefore undergoing this training, this what we call the tutorial process to recapitulate him. Or MSc student just they are undergoing that coursework, so therefore less interested. So this way we may hypothesis that participation of PhD students are higher than the MSc students, or PhD participation is higher. This is an alternate hypothesis. Research hypotheses are always the alternate hypothesis. Hypothesis is not the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is only for the rejecting to accept the alternate hypothesis. What should the specific characteristics in your main exam you may be asked? What should be the hypothesis for research? The specific, it must be specific and conceptually clear. There should be no ambiguity, and it should be written a very crisp and clear within a small sentence. It is not above more than 15 or 18 sentences. If it will, when you write more sentence, more words, then definitely it will create a problem. It will write a simple word. do not use it. Do not use the jargon or technical jargon or complex word. When you will add the complex word, then it will create a ambiguity and related to the body of the theory. So definitely that what I told, body of theory means already some literatures are there, review of research are there from the that I told that why my hypothesis would be fixed here, the participation of the PhD student higher than the masters, because here I put my theory. The PhD students are busy in the research, they are passionate in the research, therefore they join PhD. So there's some little deviate from their coursework or what the subject read in their master's time, but masters are mainly devoted in the coursework. So therefore their participation. So that means always it should be the body of theory. You should not abruptly cannot take a right with the hypothesis. It should have some logical, because therefore you remember this definition, the logical consequences, conjectural statement means it has some logic, reasonable logics, reasonable assumption. You cannot have the blank, you cannot put a hypothesis capable to empirical test, that it has to be tested, and it's very simple word. It has to be written within the 15 to 18 sentence. If you remember these few points, hope you will prepare your own notes for the exams. But if not prepared, if you remember these words, definitely you can write during your final exams. See, if any books or hope many statistical courses from a used days you went through, that what are the steps to be followed? The first is stating the hypothesis. At first, you have to write your hypothesis. That in my today's class, I put the hypothesis that participation are PhD student higher or not equal. So that means our null hypothesis will be 1, and the alternate hypothesis you have to write it. First, you have to select the hypothesis, then select the level of significance. Level of significance means the alpha. I means that suppose generally we used to extend some research to consider 5% or 1%. That means you are giving the chance to reject the null hypothesis when it is correct. That means I have been allowing him the 5 times to commit type 1 error. That alpha, the probability. That probability means you may do this error, rejecting the null hypothesis where it is true. So the level of significance, you have to fix the which level of significance you have to do, whether 5%, 1%. But interestingly, at present, we are not doing the test of hypothesis by our paper and pen that we used to do in our UG time. Now everybody we are doing the what is called statistical software. There we do not we just skip this step, because automatically it will give me the p-value. Therefore, no need to level of it will give me the p-value. Then p-value is range between 0.0 to 1. So if it is, that means when the p-value, remember this thing, when the p-value is less than 0.05, that means my level of alpha is that 5%, significant at 5% level of significance. When it is less than 0.01, that means it is significant at 1% level of significance. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So therefore, in statistical test, when you are using the statistical test, this type of test, this second step generally not used to follow. Just to go to the next step, the selecting the criterion. Many exam people I used to ask what is the suppose if it is p-value is 0.045, then what is the alpha level of this particular study? 5%, 1%, 10%, or 20%. Remember this, you do multiply the p-value into 100, you will get the exact level of significance. If it is 0.045, that means it is 4.5% level of significance. So that means you have to take in the 5% level of significance. So remember, 5% level of significance means when p-value is less than 0.05 to greater than 0.01. And when it is less than 0.01 equal to, then it will be considered as a 1% level of significance. Is it clear? Next thing is that selecting the test criteria. Test criteria means which test will apply. Whether we will apply t-test, whether you apply z-test, will apply f-test, which test you will apply, that is you have to select. that will be depends based on your variable, based on your level of measurement or the distribution of the data. Generally, that lower order measurement we do consider about that nominal measurement other the ordinal level of measurement. So when this lower order measurement will be there, generally we used to consider that my data will be in the not a normal distributed, that then non-parametric test will be applied. If in my parametric test again is there, then we have to see the sample size. If my sample size is large, then we'll go for that Z test, F test, or if my sample size is less, then we'll go for the T test. Again, the number of variable considers. If I consider the two group of sample, then we'll go for the T test. If I have more than two sample, then we'll have the again for the Z test. Again, within the two sample, we will consider the type of sample, whether it is related or unrelated. Accordingly, we have to do the student test or according to different tests you have to apply. So you have to keep remember wherever it is. So therefore, I'm suggesting just go through once the test of hypothesis chapter of any statistical books, it will be clear to you. Don't follow the extension research methodology books for this particular chapters because it is copied from any statistical books, and it is better. My understanding for hypothesis will always be lesser than a understanding of a statistician. So always follow the core book of a statistics to understand this chapter. Next is the computation, do the analysis and making the decisions. Means rejecting the null hypothesis, according to the alternate hypothesis, when considering the table value. That we told that at present we are not doing the table value. It will give you the statistical test with either single star or double star, or you can directly take your decision based on the seeing the p value. If you multiply the p value, then accordingly you may consider which value of the significant one, which variable and which value is not the significant one. This is the simple steps used to follow. But when we do the statistical test, there are four, take the decision, there are four decisions may happen. That when the null hypothesis is correct, we accept it. When null hypothesis is not correct, we reject it. Or null hypothesis is correct, but we reject it. But when null hypothesis is not correct, but we accept it. These four decisions will happen. The first two decisions are the appropriate decision. That means when null hypothesis is correct, we accept it. When null hypothesis is not correct, we reject it. But when the null hypothesis is correct, but we reject it, that means we are doing a mistake. We are doing an error. The same thing is the in case of fourth decision also. When it null hypothesis is not correct, but we are accept it. So we are doing an error. So this error, that when my null hypothesis is correct, but we reject it, then it is called that type 1 error. Sometimes it is the alpha, that level of probability. Many times I found that almost in every time in exam it has been asked that to whom we call the alpha, to whom we call the type 1 error, to whom we call the type 2 error. Type 2 error just the opposite of the fourth decision, which is not correct, but we accept it. Then we call the type 2 error. That is called the beta. So that means alpha is 0.5%. That means the 95% is our we are accepting it. So this is the type 1 or type 2 error. So you should not get confused during your exams that how you remember, I do not know, but you have to remember, memorize it, that what is called the type 1 or type 2 error. That it will almost all the time it's asked in the exams to whom will call it type 1 error and who will call it type 2 errors. Now next question is that one tail test or two tail test. Any statistical test or table in the side you find it is written that significant at 5% level of significance in a two tail test or in a single test. Two tail test, single one tail test, it is depends on the alternate hypothesis. Remember that whether my test will be one tail or two tail, it is slowly depend on the alternate hypothesis, not the null hypothesis. Means suppose consider my hypothesis that participation of PhD students in this tutorial class is higher than the masters. That means higher, that I put a direction. When the direction will be clearly mentioned, then it will be the one tail test. Direction may be higher, may be lower. It is higher, then it will be that right tail test. If it is that lower, it will be the left tail test. Or if it, when I will say that there is no difference, the participation is not equal. That means participation is not equal. That means I'm not telling which participation is higher, MSc or PhD. then it will come the two-tailed test. Then what is the critical zone will be the in both sides, left or right. Then if it is 5% is there, then it will be difference between the 2.5% and the 2.5% both the left and right side. Hope you will remember that whether my test will be one tail or two tail, it is slowly depend on the alternate hypothesis. When it is means the directional is there, whether my direction, it means participation position higher than the master, that we have a one direction, the positive direction, that will be the right tail test, the negative direction, that will be the left tail test. And when there is no mentioned direction, then it will be the two tail test.